Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Panti Personals. And thank you to all of you who've been listening or watching on the YouTube so far. And of course, for talking back to us on social media. It means a lot to us to hear that you're enjoying it. And of course, it's nice to know I'm not getting all dressed up for nothing, so thank you. Because of course, I love an excuse to get all dressed up, but if I am a very public gal who loves glitter, the spotlight and a live, loud, drunk audience, my guest today is a man who, despite his extraordinary music and songs, often shies away from the limelight. It's Adrian Crowley, the singer, according to people who know that kind of thing, with his big, deep velvet voice and cinematic stories in his songs. He was born in Malta, but dragged up in Galway, and these days calls Dublin home. And that voice, well, what can I say? It's like, well, I'm going to go with the blackest, darkest, deepest pint of Guinness in a pub pre the smoking ban because it has a slightly acrid edge to it. And his new album, The Watchful Eye of the Stars, is mesmerizing. You know, Adrian, hi, nice to meet you properly.
Likewise.
You're the first person that we've ever had a proper discussion beforehand about how to describe your voice. Because I had written down big, deep, rough velvet voice.
Day one, I stole on board a northbound ship. No one saw me or my shadow on the gangplank. For that I am thankful, I am thankful.
And you know, Helen and John and Connor there, they didn't go with rough velvet. They didn't feel that was right, even though words like gravel was thrown out, and to me that is rough.
That is
so
rough.
In the end, I thought torn velvet.
I like that because there's still that softness, but the broken edge.
I like that. Yeah. That's the quality that I like about it. That's why I went with the deep pint of Guinness pre-smoking ban.
In my hiding place under the calico, and it's drowsy work when you stay invisible. So I drifted off and we put out to sea. I'm northbound, oh, I'm northbound, oh, I'm northbound, stowaway.
Anyway, hi.
Hi.
It's funny that we haven't really met properly before, partly because we're the same age and Ireland is small, but also, of course, because your great mate, Conor Horgan, is my good mate, Conor Horgan, and Conor, of course, among a long list of dishonourable things and shameful things that he's done and bad life decisions he's made, he directed the Queen of Ireland movie. Yes. So that's a really tight connection there, so I'm surprised we haven't met before. What's your excuse for knowing Conor?
Well, we had sort of glanced by each other at gigs for years, but we only got to know each other in Paris, actually, in 2017. We were at the CCI, the Centre Culturel Irlandais. We were both there at the same time for the residency. So, yeah, we clicked there.
And, of course, because Conor has basically adopted France as his second home since then. And you're married to a French woman? Or?
That's right, yes.
Yes.
So Conor decided he was just going to stay on. A few of the artists did, actually, over the previous years. And it's just, you know, you're in Paris working on the thing you love.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there's nothing better than that. So and I suppose they were quite freewheeling, and they thought, well, let's continue freewheeling in Paris.
Well, I can see the temptation. Now, I've never done the artist residency there at the Centre Culturel Irlandais, but I have done my show there.
Oh, yeah.
And it was quite an experience. I mean, a fun one. So I can't remember, a few nights there, and it's my sort of standard monologue-y stand-up draggery show. And so on the first night, the audience was just a lot of Irish people who live in Paris.
Yeah.
They get all the references, all the jokes, it's all in English, whatever. But then like the next night and for the following nights, it's sort of a lot of middle class ladies and their husbands, French ladies who just go to things in the local cultural centre.
Yeah.
And so it was so funny, and I'm sort of standing there all in English, telling some pretty wild stories about, life in drag, and there's these like very well put together middle-aged Parisian ladies leaning over to translate bits for their husbands and stuff. It was quite nutty, but I loved it.
But they responded well.
Yes, they did. Yeah, it's a really fun and sort of brilliant place for artists and creators.
Yeah, you feel the history at every corner of the street, every crack in the pavement, every little square, every little park. There's something there. Every window you look up to. I imagined it to be like that when I was there. I felt the ghosts of writers around me, and lounge singers and poets.
Well, now I can't let that reference to ghosts slip by, and of course we were also talking about Conor Horgan at the same time, so a film is in my head, because of course there's an amazing documentary kind of about you. I mean, it is about you.
Kind of, yeah.
It's called
sort of.
The Science of Ghosts.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it was directed by a really good friend of mine, Niall McCann. So he was making a documentary about the Glasgow music scene called Lost in France, and specifically about the Chemical Underground, the record label. And because...
Which is your record label.
Yes, so that's how we met, because he wanted to talk to me, do an interview with me for that film. But in the end, I wasn't a part of the film, but we kept meeting up and talking. We became friends. And we'd talk and talk. We'd have coffee, go for a walk, have a pint. And we just drifted from the subject,
Which is very much the energy of the film.
Yeah, exactly. So one day he said to me, in a typical Niall way, he was like, self-effacing, and he was sort of saying, stop me if this sounds ridiculous, but maybe we could make a film together. And I was like, I'm not going to stop you. What did you have in mind? So we found the story in a very circuitous way and managed to get funding,
The Arts Council.
Yeah, the Real Art Fund.
People who want to have a look at it, it's called The Science of Ghosts, and you can get it from the IFI streaming website.
That's right.
And then from reading the reviews, they're all very positive. But one thing that they did not give me was a sense of how funny the film is.
Oh, that's good to hear. That you think it's funny.
It is funny. It's very funny. So it was a really enjoyable watch. I thought I was going to be watching, something very esoteric and all that. But it's not at all. It's very funny. While also being non-linear and nutty and all of those other things. But the experience of making it seemed very much like so many other things, very collaborative.
Yes, definitely. Well, I enjoyed every second of it, and also I found the process really exciting, because the way we did it was Niall asked me to record myself telling stories and then share the stories with him and Matt, who he was making the film with, and they would get together and do rough edits. But I wasn't in the editing suite. I'd sort of be shown snippets of where they were with the film at the time. And I was always so excited, obviously. So I had this kind of distance to a degree.
See, that's interesting to me, because one of the impressions I get of you is that you are quite shy, isn't the right word, but you're an unusual front man for your own work, in the sense that you do pull back quite a lot. You're not a out there covered in glitter kind of guy. And so the experience of the film for you is you were very much involved in it, which is like so different from my experience of Conor making a film about me, because I didn't look at a single thing ever. I didn't want to know anything about it. I would just turn up when he asked me to and try and ignore him. I mean, that was it. And so I never saw a single thing until it was finished. And yet you were very involved. The two of you were making a movie together.
Yes. Because it's not a straight up documentary.
Yes, it's
I would
not,
say
yeah.
it's a docudrama, and it involved writing. So we co-wrote it, in fact. So that's why I was that close to the process.
Yeah.
But in terms of how it was all put together and everything,
You had some experience from film anyway, because you've written scores for films and...
I have had, yeah. And I love writing, and I love writing stories, and I love telling stories. So this felt perfect. But the one thing I said to Niall at the beginning was, I'm not really comfortable with a documentary being made about me. I just don't think I'm the right subject for that. Maybe find someone else.
No, I totally get that. That is why I had wanted no involvement with Connors, because it feels weird. And even just having people following you around as something that is kind of ordinary to you, and they have a camera and a student with a boom.
Yeah.
It's a weird position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that instinct. But anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I can't let it pass without mentioning the most harrowing thing I've seen on film in so long. There's this bit where you're in Coney Island and someone tells you the story about an elephant from the Coney Island Fun Fair and all that. I don't know what the year was, but Thomas Edison was around because the elephant killed someone, accidentally, and it was decided that the elephant had to be put down, and Thomas Edison volunteered, I assume, to execute the elephant by electrocution to show people the power of electricity. And she tells the story, and it's very sad.
And it happened somewhere around here.
Oh, no way.
It must have.
Betsy the renegade elephant.
Killed by Thomas Edison.
Then in the film, they have actual original footage of them murdering the elephant by electrocution, and it took my breath away, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since.
Yeah, it was something we thought long and hard about whether or not it was too much. It is horrific.
It wasn't too much. Well, in my opinion, it wasn't too much. I guess because there's some distance with the black and white and everything, the quality of the film, but it was a real gut punch, and it has really stayed with me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
that's not a complaint.
No, I know. Yeah. And absolutely, in it's such a punch in the stomach when it happens. And also in terms of the sequence of events in the film, and then my character is alone again with the afterglow of that horrific story. Yeah. And then you wonder, did any of that conversation happen? Was it just a ghostly thought drawn from the history of the place?
And there's a sort of great line at the end, and I'm probably paraphrasing a little here, but it's interesting in relation to what you also said about not wanting to do a straight-up documentary. You say, a documentary needs a hero, and I'm not a fucking hero. Oh, yeah. Was that written?
That was written, actually. That was one of Niall's lines that I just kind of imbibed. And the reason why I don't see it as a film about myself is for that reason, actually. So it's sort of like a parallel world where you see Adrian Crowley on the screen, but is it the Adrian Crowley that you're speaking to right now?
Didn't I see you the other day?
No, I don't think so. You are kind of familiar.
You too.
Are you Alistair?
Alistair? No, but that's kind of funny. Why would you say that? My surname is Crowley, like Alistair.
Alistair
Crowley.
Alistair Crowley.
That's what you mean.
You're Alistair Crowley.
Yes. No, I'm not him. I'm not him. I'm Adrian.
Adrian Crowley?
Yes.
So you're not Alistair Crowley the Satanist?
No, but that's that happens a lot.
I felt like I was a metaphor for the artist, if that makes any sense.
It does, especially in the context of the movie. I mean, it is, it's surreal and episodic and fleeting, and I mean, it isn't a straight-up documentary in the sense that, I didn't come away from it feeling like I knew loads more about you, or certainly in any sort of chronological or sort of sense. I mean, I might have known more about your spirit, but not any biographical
Yeah.
details. Yeah,
Exactly.
Now, I wasn't intending to talk all about the film at the
That's
beginning.
okay.
So let's go back a little bit and talk a bit more about your actual biographical details, because
Oh, yeah.
they're actually pretty interesting too. So your dad's from Galway, but your mum is from Malta. Now, there aren't many people from Malta, so that already is a little unusual. You were born in Malta, then you were, for a couple of years, in the Cameroon, then you were mostly raised in Galway.
Yeah.
Then with a few detours, including France, where you picked up a partner, you've been calling Dublin home since
Yes.
the 90s.
Earlier, because I came to Dublin in 1986,
You see, we're the
So-
same age. We were born the same year. I don't know what month you were. I'm November.
August.
August, so you're a little older than me. That makes us 52 listeners. So 1968, greatest year to be born, of course, and summer of love and all sorts of things. So you're born in Malta because your mother was from Malta. And the story I read is that your parents met in South Africa in the middle of a sandstorm.
Not South Africa.
Oh, not
North
South
Africa.
Oh, North Africa, in the middle of a sandstorm.
That's right, yeah.
If I was you, I would really dig into that to find out, are they just romanticizing? Because meeting in a sandstorm, it's too perfect.
I know it is, isn't it?
Was that true, really?
It's true. It's really true. And any chance I get, I try and get my parents to retell that story. Because every time they do tell the story of how they met or the months leading up to when they met, there's always a new detail. And it does sound like something from a film.
It does. It's very David Lean or something. But so your parents met in Africa. Then there was some political turmoil, and they went to Malta for a while, and you were born there. One of the other little details that cropped up in one of the things I read about you was that when your mother was 8 months pregnant or something with you, she had to dive into the Mediterranean and save somebody's life.
Yeah, that's true. And the last time I spoke to her, just a couple of days ago, I asked her about it again. And for some reason, I thought she saved a man's life. And she said, no, it was a girl. And she was really far out from the shore. It was in Malta, there are these sort of like beaches that, sudden drops into the water, so it's really deep. And it's people sit there in the sun, and it's just like these concrete platforms, and people dive in and swim out. But she found herself there alone with no one else around, and she picked up on someone in distress. But she knew this girl was drowning, and she was heavily pregnant in the July heat of Malta, and she was trying to get someone's attention, but everyone was too far away to hear her. So she said, there's nothing more I can do but jump in.
I have no idea what being heavily pregnant does to you in the water. Does it make you more buoyant?
I don't know. It mustn't be easy. You know?
No, I can't imagine.
So that's true, yeah.
And then you were born how long after this dramatic episode?
A month later, I was born. So yeah, my dad was telling me how there was a coup d'état in Sierra Leone, and it meant that he had to leave, and it was a very traumatic time and very violent.
How had your
So-
parents ended up in Sierra Leone? A man from Galway and a woman from
my
Malta.
father worked for this engineering firm that took him around Africa, on infrastructure and building and airports, and he was working on these different projects. So
And what was your
sites.
mum doing?
My mother was living in Libya. She spent a lot of her childhood in North Africa, in Libya, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, because her father's business was in Libya, even though they were mostly based in Malta. So, just by chance, my mother and father met.
What was your granddad's business?
He was a merchant. He had a winery and distillery. I think that's what you call it, in Libya. Actually, I should know exactly what the business entailed. I can see my mother going, "You should know." So that anyway, they were based there.
And your mother's a published author. She wrote a book about her younger life in Africa.
Yeah, it's called Beyond the Ghibli. The Ghibli is a wind from in North Africa, like the Mistral.
Yeah.
So the book, it's an autobiography. It's basically going from her first memories up to the time when she moved to Ireland, and then it stops. So, and I remember my younger brother was a bit peeved that he didn't make it into the book because he was born just after.
Sorry,
story
son, you were the
ends.
boring part of my life. Vicky Crowley, Beyond Ghibli.
Beyond the Ghibli.
Beyond the Ghibli. Anyway, so back to you. So your parents went to Cameroon afterwards for how long with their newborn
Yeah, just
son?
2.5 years or so. So yeah,
So
I
do you
lived
have any
there.
memories of Cameroon?
I do. It's apparently you're not really supposed to be able to remember things from that far back in your life, but I have this strange thing that happens to me. Apparently the sense that you have most powerfully connected to memory is your sense of smell.
Yes.
So I do get these aromas. For years and years I was wondering what was happening. I'd get this aroma of something, and suddenly I was at the beginning of my life and I was in an exotic place. But not with a full picture, but just the sensation. And this kept happening. And as soon as I would get this scent, it would disappear. And I was living in France for a while, and I was walking through this park in Toulouse. I remember one day it happened, and it was powerful, so I just stayed with it. And I conjured up an image of me sitting under this tree, and I thought, that has to have been Cameroon.
So what is this now?
So I keep forgetting the name of it, but it's a type of plant, a flower, when it's in full bloom. And it's got this really incredible aroma. Well, I find it incredible.
Well, I am absolutely on board with that idea about a smell and memory, because my earliest memory is a smell. And if I get it ever again, I'm always transported immediately back. It is this kind of plasticky smell of drinking out of one of those plasticky sippy cups.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sippy cup. That is the earliest thing I can remember. And that's very young. What age are you when you're using one of those spouty sippy cups?
1 or 2.
So, and that is my earliest memory. So, from Cameroon to Barna,
Yeah.
which I have an irrational hatred for, I have to say.
Yeah.
Because when I was a teenager, the only competitive tennis match I ever played for Ballinrobe, County Mayo, was we were a little team and we went to Barna, and they had a really fancy little court and we felt like the country, like we have our bit of tar macadam in the corner of a field to play the tennis on, and they had like a proper court.
Was that in Trusky West, up high up on the hill?
It
looking
was
out?
high, yes, over the sea. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason why I hated them. It all just seemed so nice, So how's Barna?
Well, whenever I go back, it's usually I'm in a taxi or someone's giving me a lift because I can't drive. So I'm looking out the window and I'm thinking, I remember crawling through the undergrowth there into a hut I made in a blackthorn tree, and now it's just 500 houses or something. And there are traffic lights as well and traffic jams.
That is the same or even Ballinrobe, County Mayo. The field that we all played in is now just a giant housing estate.
Yeah.
But so when you are sort of like thinking or feeling, your life, where you've come from and all that, does Malta play a role at all, or a small one or a large one? I mean, are you a Barna man?
Not really. I suppose growing up I always felt that I wasn't really... I always felt like a blow-in, I suppose, which is fine. In school, I think I was probably regarded as, in a strange way, exotic, because everyone knew that I wasn't born in Galway City. I don't know. So I was always cast in this light of being from somewhere else, if you know what I mean. And
well, even having a mother with an accent or something was exotic in 1968 here, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I suppose, even though I didn't visit Malta very much in my teens, we went on a family trip one time, And then since then, as an adult, I went back. But in my mind, it was this magical place, which I was very proud of.
Yeah. And what about grannies and aunts and all, or uncles or cousins or whatever?
Yeah, well, they would visit all the time. And so when my grandmother would come from Malta to visit, there was just the sound of Maltese being spoken in the house, obviously, which I never learned. I never learned the language. I only have a few words. So, yeah, it wasn't, it was ever present in my upbringing, in a sense. It was always there.
And if you go to Malta
Maltese.
now, do you feel a connection to it?
I do, actually. I was over there 4 years ago, and I think I had some kind of psychic experience walking through this particular street in Valletta. I was taking photographs. I love taking pictures, and it was just at dusk, and I had this eerie feeling. Well, I was in a very beautiful street, so like I mentioned before, I sometimes, you can feel the ambience in an old street, and there's something about it. It wants to make you stop and just soak it in. So I was taking photographs, and I kept coming back to this one stretch of the street, and it was like I had a deja vu or something. And I took a photograph, and I think, there was the street name in the picture, which I didn't really notice till later. And then my aunt told me, "Oh, that's where your great-grandfather lived, and your great-great-grandfather, and they must have been speaking to you at that moment, So,
Do you believe in, that the dead could speak to you?
in a sense, yeah. It's not necessarily them speaking, though. I think it's your own internal radio that is able to pick them up as well.
Well, I don't know how long we've been talking about for a while, and we've managed to avoid talking about your music. So
That's fine. That's fine with me. I hate talking about it. I'm joking.
But does your background or Malta or the sort of semi-nomadic background of your parents, does that play into your music, or has it? Have you written about those things? Or
Usually the way I write isn't so based on, say, like literal references, like a diary. It's not necessarily like that. But I think the broadness that comes with traveling definitely opens you up to different, say, how would I put this? It's like you can easily slip into someone else's shoes and experience their life through your own eyes and everything. I feel traveling has done that for me. I think so. It's played a part in it.
Well, your songs are, I think I described them as cinematic in the introduction, because they often are they paint pictures and do tell stories. They may not be specifically your literal story or whatever, but that surely must play into these things. I did wonder if you were psychic, to be honest.
Oh yeah?
Well, for example, you have this incredible song, The Shut-Ins Lament.
Little bird of sunshine, I watch you on my windowsill, rescued from my nighttime, my visitor, my newfound friend, little bit of golden, straight out of the blue. I wait for you to sing your sunny song.
And I, listened to it, and then I watched the really beautiful video, and I just assumed you wrote this during lockdown about lockdown. It is exactly that. And then I read, actually, you didn't. You wrote it before all of this.
Yeah, that's right.
It feels like you're exactly describing what we've all been doing for the last year.
Yeah. That is spooky when that happens.
I wait for you to sing your morning song.
It happens quite often in music, and not just to me, I suppose. Someone told me that they assumed another one of the songs was about the lockdown too, underwater song, and they assumed all that imagery was a metaphor for what we were experiencing at the time, what we are experiencing now.
Shutting the Lament is like about a bird,
Yeah.
There's a bird flying in, and the you're imagining what it might have seen, and so on. And birds are a recurring theme, it turns out, with you. There was larks, in an earlier album.
Yeah.
There's crows. Even your Instagram is crow, and I get that that's
yeah.
from your name, Crowley. But there's Crow Song. There's Bird of Sunshine in the Shut-In's Lament. So birds is a recurring theme with you.
They fall away when you come back to me.
And speaking of birds and your music, finally, you're going to do something for us, although it's spoken word. Spoken word isn't your, typical oeuvre, but you use spoken word in part
Yes.
fairly often.
I do, yeah. It's something that's been showing itself intermittently while writing my albums. I think it's something to do with how a story, say I'm writing a story and I'm thinking it's going to be a short story to be in a book, for instance, but then it jumps back into the song again and I let it in.
So this piece,
Yeah.
you're going to do, it's called Ascension of Larks. Tell us a little bit about it first.
Well, that is something I wrote during lockdown quite recently. I was working on a manuscript for a novel, and this passage, it was one of the characters was talking about wanting to leave their body, and they're talking about how they fantasize about not just being a bird, but being a whole flock of birds, and not being just one particular kind of flock of birds, but a whole variety of flocks of birds. And he just went on and on in like this kind of rant. So it was pages and pages long, and it made sense in the story. But at one point I thought, I'm going to lift that out now and put it to music, which I did. And then I got in touch with Niall, who we've just been talking about from The Science of Ghosts, and we made a short film based on that.
Why larks?
Well, larks were just one of the birds in the story, so they're all different kinds.
Because if I was going to imagine, a flock of birds being another separate entity, it should definitely be starlings. Murmuration has that quality about it.
Yes, and I've written about starlings, but then there were all these other birds that I hadn't written about too. So,
well, this
Yes.
is a good time to hear it then.
Okay.
So, the Ascension of Larks.
Sometimes I wish I was an ascension of larks, climbing higher in our song, ever closer to God's eye, into the dizzying blue, our harmonies shrill and echoing in the lofty chamber, as we climb up the rarefied ropes, closer and closer to the outer reaches, where wings no longer have purchase on the veil of steams that drapes the earth, our tiny hearts sending Morse code into outer space. Sometimes I wish I was a bevy of swans crowding on full sail, our tails, our rudders passing under city bridges, over the deep black mirror to our magnificent necks, chest bones splaying the water as we spread out across the estuary, then going about and gathering to return again upstream for no other reason than to parade our stately arrogance. Sometimes I wish I was a jubilee of eagles in slow revolution high over a valley, our turning figures like ash suspended in the updraft, 1,000 hands high over pines and clearings and hunters' paths, as we shriek and shriek and shriek again, heads cocking, eyes blinking, V-tails tilting, shadows colluding our heraldic emblems in a broken spectre against the towering cloud. Sometimes I wish I was a reel of Virginia rails stealing through the reeds and rushes, planting our feet widely on broad floating leaves, our red needle beaks parting the murk in salt marshes, our bodies low quiet shapes, wedges in the shallows, pushing through stems and tall tight leaves, discreet and content to haunt the brackish silent margins. Sometimes I wish I was a season of killdeer, foraging in the lowlands between the steps of cattle, supping in standing water and scouring pebble shores for shell pieces to adorn nests with gifts from the ocean, black necklaces around our throats, and crying out from rooftops as we step along ridge beams to feast on flies plucked from the roof tiles of low-pitched houses with open skylights. Sometimes I wish I was a screaming frenzy of swifts, sickling through the October air, swooping under stone arches, and breakneck speeding low over rivers thick with rainwater, then spiraling high around church steeples in a vesper to the crepuscular heaven. Sometimes I wish I was a slurp of sapsuckers clouding in a flurry over a crown of branches, then dropping like stones with wings tucked in to a grove of birches. Red caps darting as we make our work to hammer hole the bark and drain the sap into our bellies, and then flurrying up again to scatter down grove to grove and on and on and on. Sometimes I wish I was an unkindness of ravens lurking and black-eyeing from iron railings and inking the dusky air over skeletal sycamores, raining superstition with carrion breath, cloak wings frayed, slowly beating a death knell tempo to our sniggering throats, all in a dark mess of coughing ghosts. Sometimes I wish I was a deceit of lapwings stalking the soft margins of floodwaters in the height of midnight darkness, and across furrows freshly turned over in dark fields of breaching nightworms, our crests unfurling slick black wisps of stolen tendrils. Sometimes I wish I was a herd of wrens, round-headed and browny, hopping along in our yellow crowns, rulers of all winged creatures, kings of the fence and kings of winter. Sometimes I wish I was an ascension of larks.
It's beautiful. But I was imagining you very much enjoying coming up with new collective nouns. You have this other really beautiful song, the Crow Song,
Yes.
which is telling this really gorgeous story about you and your brother, your kids, and you find this crow with an injured wing and you nurse it back to health. And then it has a slightly devastating ending. And that's what I want to ask you about. Mm-hmm. Because you've nursed this bird back to health, and then the song implies that you then define the bird later dead. But is that part true? Because how do you know it's the same bird?
Exactly.
Solitary crow with a crippled wing. And I looked to the sky, and I looked to the sky.
But then
But then...
I looked to the sky, so you sort of say, well, is it because
your boyish heart believed it to be the same bird.
I think it did, and then I was thinking, well, maybe it wasn't him, and then I looked to the sky. So yeah, that is one of the songs where it's pretty much taken straight out of a life experience.
Yes, that is biographical.
Yes.
So, I want to talk to you about your music properly. Like, there's two things that I just in reading about you that were, well, one made me hate you and one made me very interested. The one that made me hate you is the one that I have with all really talented musicians. In that, there's a story where you like weird instruments and sort of collecting them. And there's a story that you're in, I can't remember, a secondhand shop or somewhere, and you open this box and there's a clarinet in it, and you take it home, and then you just realize, oh, I can play the clarinet. Turns out I can play the clarinet. And the next day, you're recording using the clarinet, and I'm like, that fucking prick. That is so outside of my ken. You know that you can be that talented and have an affinity with music and all that. You can just pick up something and start playing it. And so the other thing that made me just very interested is you said you dream music sometimes in, complete pieces, sounds. So has this intense, deep musical connection always been with you?
It has, but I didn't really know what to do with it, and I couldn't really play very many things at the time. And actually, in reference to the clarinet, it's the only reason why I could get a sound out of it straight away is because I had played the saxophone years before, and it's very similar. The reed is very similar and everything. But yeah, as a teenager, I suppose I'd gone to piano lessons and I'd taught myself guitar, but I didn't really consider myself proficient at all, and I still don't. It's just I use instruments as a vehicle to try and lift the song up and to pick out melodies,
Are you is it a musical family? Do your parents play or sing?
My mother plays the piano. She introduced me to Chopin waltzes, I remember, I learned quite a few of them for a while. And my dad has a really powerful voice and was always the one to sing at parties. Mm. But he never played an instrument. He doesn't play an instrument.
Your dad is into the crooners, like all our dads.
Yes,
Frank
exactly.
Sinatra and
Absolutely.
Elvis?
I think so, but mainly Frank Sinatra was his main one. And Frank Sinatra, actually, I only began to appreciate just in the last few years, really.
Well, speaking of appreciation, because I mentioned in the introduction that you're sort of a singer's musician or a musician's musician, and you are, like in the industry, you're very highly respected and very highly regarded by other singers and musicians. I read that Ryan Adams was asked, name the greatest the songwriter that no one's ever heard of, and he mentioned you. First of all, I was annoyed on your behalf for him saying no one's ever heard of you. But also I was thrilled because, that's quite a thing for somebody to say about you.
Yeah, I think that was 19 years ago now in the Rolling Stone. Well, a friend of mine bumped into me in Wexford Street, and he is a massive Ryan Adams fan, and he was like freaking out, and he was really excited, really flushed with excitement. And I was like, what's up? And he said, he could hardly say it. And he was like, you're in the Rolling Stone, Ryan Adams talks about you. And I said, no, you've made a mistake. Sometimes people say Alistair Crowley, and you think they've just said my name. No, but he was probably talking about Alistair Crowley.
The Satanist.
Yeah. So I thought, no, that's obviously a mistake. Darn, just forget it. So he went away and he came back with the Rolling Stone magazine and he showed me. And I was saying, it's obviously a misprint. He must have meant Alistair Crowley. And then he said, no, but look down. Does Alistair Crowley have an album entitled this? And I was like, all right, okay, it was me then.
When reading about you, a lot of people refer to you in those kind of terms. You won the Choice Music Prize 10 years ago for Season of Sparks, that album. In a way, it does sometimes feel like you're a musician's, not secret isn't the right word because you had your own successes, but that in some ways the buying public hasn't necessarily caught on to the extent that other musicians and singers and songwriters have.
So the wind won't blow it all the way. So the wind won't blow it all the way.
But that doesn't really bother you, and that is part of this sort of almost, not shy isn't the right word, but not pushing yourself forward quality that I get from you. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. Though I do feel I've been becoming more and more out of my shell over the years and maybe discovering more about my voice and how I connect with people.
And splinters, put it in a sheltering place, in a shelter of the wind.
I think in the last few years that's really come up even more, and I think for many years my demeanor maybe was apologetic or something, and but quite happy to be like that, and I never really wanted to make a fuss about what I do or anything.
I mean, the other thing is, we discussed earlier about how to describe your voice, but you've had 9 albums now, is that right? And listening back to some of the earlier stuff, your voice has changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
Is that a natural change as you're getting older, or because you're sort of sitting more comfortably into it as an instrument or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely both of those, I'd say. Well, with singing, I think it's a peculiar psychology, singing itself. There is a psychology attached to it, and how you can make it more difficult for yourself than necessary. It's quite an illusion, actually. Over the years, I've just found a way to allow my voice to resonate the way it's supposed to. But then also getting older and where the vocal cords become more floppy or something, I don't know. But the chamber of your body becomes very much a part of singing.
Oh. Well, it's funny because your voice and sometimes also reminds me of, as we mentioned earlier, our mutual friend Conor Horgan, because he also has that very deep, sonorous voice. I mean, there are fetishists out there who would love to have a recorded conversation of the two of you talking. So tell us about the new album and the song you're going to do from it for us.
Yes, this song, it's called Bread and Wine. I think of it as a 2-chord trick because it just has 2 chords, and it does. And I've recorded it with some incredible musicians: Cora Venus Lunny, the violinist, Lisa Dowdall, viola, Kate Ellis, the cellist, and John Parrish. He plays drums on it. He produced the album. The whole album was just a joy, to create. And I only ever allow people in who I think are amazing and who I love. And the song itself just mysteriously arrived in my life. Don't really know how, but it's me in the song anyway.
I hope so. Okay, well, let's hear it.
Okay.
I found a halfway room in a seaside town. I'll stay here for a while. Through my window I can hear the ship bells ring, and I awake to the smell of the brine. The stray dogs here follow me around. They seem to know their kind. And I play the piano in a harbor bar. They pay me in bread and wine, bread and wine. It's taken me so long to write to you. Well, I just couldn't find a pen. And then there was the quest for writing paper, and it just went on from there. I have it in my mind to tell you more when the time is right. But meanwhile I'll be playing waltzes for bread and wine, for bread and wine. So how's life in the city of lost poets? Did they ever catch that thief who stole the relics of Saint Valentine, who says romance is beat? I can picture him running across the rooftops, laughing all the way. Who knows, maybe I'll bump into him here, and I'll share my bread and wine, my bread and wine. Seaside town, I'll stay here for a while. Through my window I can hear the ship bells ring, and I awake to the smell of the brine. I play the piano in a harbor bar for bread and wine. I play the piano in a harbor bar for bread and wine. I'll be playing the piano in a harbor bar for bread and wine. And they pay me in bread and wine, bread and wine.
Gorgeous.
Thanks.
You have probably an unfair reputation, sort of, for always writing sad songs, but they're not actually always sad.
No.
But there is maybe a melancholy tone or something.
Maybe, yeah.
Somewhere in the stuff I was reading about you, there's a sort of funny story where a friend challenges you to write a song about a party, and you write about leaving the party.
This is a happy song.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Ish.
There's a little breath that you left on the glass. There's a little sigh of regret. When you laugh, there's a perfume ghost that trails along the avenue. There's a little lie and a little truth lost on you.
Do you think of yourself as a melancholic person?
No, not especially. No, I don't think so. I actually goof around a lot. Think I'm a bit of a joker, to be honest. But it's sort of like, it reminds me of when I was in school. I think I must have been about 8. I was having a great time, you know. And the teacher asked me to stay back for a chat just after the bell went at the end of the day. And she said, "Come here, Adrian, sit down." I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Are you okay?" You know? And I felt my heart going, oh, well, she's worried about me, you know? And I was like, "Yeah, why?" She said, "You just always seem to have a really sad face." And I just said, "No, it's just my face." So musically, it's just my face.
I could stay here in the story and turn the pages if you want me to.
Well, I mean, that is probably why before watching the film, I wasn't expecting it to be funny. So I'm guilty of it too, for, projecting onto you
That's fine.
a melancholy quality. You have 2 kids, 11 and
18.
18. So you can't be a melancholy dour dad with an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old. And the 18-year-old is really into music. Mm-hmm. And your daughter, Alice, Max and Alice.
That's right, yeah.
Alice, 11, and she's already a fully paid-up actress.
That's right, yeah. She is a natural. She's going to be in the new film by Donald Foreman, which I think is coming out in early next year. And I was bowled over because I brought her along to what turned out to be an audition. I thought it was just like an informal meeting with Donald in his mum's house and the lead actress. So who was there to see Alice, and they improvised a scene, you know, and Alice just brought it to this level I would never have expected.
Like, did you know she was a performer?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, ever since she was very small, she loves to sing and she loves to tell funny stories and she loves to get into roles, you know, but always at home. So, you know, there's a different dimension to it when you're asked to do it on cue in an unfamiliar place with strangers, you know.
Alice is in The Science of Ghosts, your own documentary.
That's right.
But aren't you both in a film together?
Yes, and then there's this other film called In the Woods with a Dead Dog, which is a short film. It's doing festivals at the moment, directed by a dear friend of mine, Vera Grazia Day. So it's a dark comedy. And I play lead, and Alice plays my daughter. And it was an amazing experience. It's quite... Yeah, it is a very dark film. And it is funny. It's kind of funny in the way that... Well, I suppose you would laugh out loud in parts, yeah. But it's desperately... The main character is in turmoil constantly. So it's almost laughable how much in turmoil he is in, you know. And Alice plays an exceptional... She just puts on an amazing performance. Everyone was bowled over. And
then Max, the 18-year-old, is into music and is a musician. And I always wonder, obviously my parents aren't drag queens, so there's no, but people who go into the same things as their parents. So was that almost an inevitability, or he did it despite you, or?
I never pushed him towards it, but the thing is, there was music in the house all the time, as you can imagine, and I always just I let him do what he wanted. We both just encouraged him in whatever, both Alice and Max, in whatever they were interested in. I remember the first time he started playing the piano and the look on his face when he repeated the same 3 notes in succession. I think he was 3 years old, and he looked at me and I thought, he's got the bug, you know. And he's always been hungry to learn more, and he plays the uilleann pipes too, so yeah, he's a traditional musician as well.
Yeah, there was I was reading about your own sort of discovery of music and all that, and picking up a guitar for the first time, and you almost were doing it in secret for quite a while, not because your parents were anti-music, you know. Why were you doing it secretly?
I suppose I was just too shy to play in front of anybody, and the idea of someone asking me to play them a song was just frankly terrifying. So I just kept it to myself. And you, Max, then growing up in a house where, as a parent who's a musician and music is everywhere, I assume did not have that same. That's right. Yeah. Well, thankfully, I shed that neurosis a long time ago myself. But yes, he's never had any qualms about playing in front of people. So if he had learned a tune on the pipes, practiced it, and assumed, right, now I've got that tune down. Yeah, I know that tune. So if someone asks him, could you play me Dark Slender Boy? And he'd go, yeah, no problem. And he'd take out his pipes and play it.
No problem. That's all the trad tradition, isn't it? Just whipping it out. And
yeah.
Well, and also, you know, he's into trad and the uilleann pipes and into hip hop and all that because he's an 18-year-old in this day and age. And neither of which really strike me as your particular bags. So does he bring things to you that you wouldn't have found on your own?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also he comes downstairs, knocks on my door and says, if I'm working on something, piece of music, he'll say, that thing you were playing earlier on, can you play it again? And I play it to him again, and he asks me, is that for anything in particular? And I'm like, no, I'm just noodling around here. So he comes back down and he says, can I just sample that, what you've just done?
Hey Max, fuck it up.
So that has happened. But then, of course, I hear his music all the time and the music he listens to. So now it's part of my life, and that must embed its way in some way, you know.
So the current album is your 9th. I mean, you do churn them out. So are you already planning the 10th? And music is your thing, but there is also writing and film scores.
Yeah.
So what is next?
Well, I'm going on this tour this autumn around Europe.
You hope.
Yeah, I hope. And I tell myself it's happening. Of course, there's a question mark that hovers over all plans like that. But I suppose I never feel like I work hard enough, and I'm always pushing myself, and I always feel I could create more stuff. So I'm always
Doesn't everybody
pushing
feel
myself.
that though?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So what is next? I seem to always have about 7 different things going at the same time, which I'm trying to finish. Right now is no exception. You know?
And it's funny, when I knew, you know, you were coming on, I messaged Conor Horgan and I said, Adrian Crowley's coming on. And I said, you know, what's the bullet points? You know, and he said, and one of them he says this, they fucking love him in Europe.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
Well, they do, I think. Is touring, because you do have this reticent shyness, and you said you've sort of gotten over that mostly, but is touring something you love doing?
For my supper is my midnight feast. I'm northbound.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I adore it. And I think, let's see, it was about 9 years ago I started touring around Europe consistently, and it felt like an epiphany. That first tour, I just really, really felt I was connecting with all these people in all these amazing places, and I love traveling anyway, and obviously I love music and singing, so the two together, that's what touring is, and it's very intense. And it can be exhausting. For many years I was touring alone by train all around Europe, carrying my stuff, 2 guitars sometimes, and that is
entirely alone.
Yeah, entirely alone.
And the rain gets sweeter, and the salt turns to sugar, and the rain gets sweeter.
Oh yeah, and I know every bump in every footpath and cobblestone in Utrecht and Paris and Amsterdam, all these places, because I've dragged my suitcase across those places, and I, rushed for trains. I know every single broken elevator that still isn't fixed all around Europe. Every single broken escalator. But now, the last big tour I did, I had a driver and tour manager, and I was thinking, this is so much easier. And my booking agent and friend said to me, I've been telling you that for nearly 10 years. So that's the way I do it from now on, with someone with me.
I have to say, I love the touring thing too. It's really hard work, but it feels like the work you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
In front of people, doing what you're meant to be doing and all. My only thing about doing it alone is after the gig, it's just you. And I prefer at that point, after the gig, to be in a thing, doing shows with other people. You can have the drink and the whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's something funny about walking off, hopefully to applause, into a quiet room and you sit there on your own.
Yeah.
Anyway, Adrian, it's been lovely to meet you properly and to speak to you. It's been a very charming afternoon. So thanks very much.
Oh, a pleasure. Thank you.
Well done. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That
Really
was
enjoyed
good
it.
and easy, nice. I mean, people are always nice.